Welcome to Teaching Artistry with Courtney J. Boddie. That's me. This is a podcast that celebrates artists and advocates for community engagement. And this is We Can't Go Back, a video series in partnership with Creative Generation meant to examine, interrogate, and confront racist policies and systems in the arts. This series amplifies leaders and arts in the arts and culture sector who drive radical change in communities through anti-racist and liberatory practices. Subscribe to the Teaching Artistry with Courtney J. Boddie YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I identify as a Black cisgendered woman. My pronouns are her, she, hers. And I am uplifting and paying respect to my ancestors from across the African diaspora who have been stolen from their native lands, as well as within the US. I live in Brooklyn, and these are the stolen lands of the Munsee, Lenape, and Canarsie nations. And I pay respect and uplift the indigenous diaspora woven into my history through a network of solidarity and love from the Cherokee, Uchi, and Creek nations. Yes, I'm unbelievably excited to welcome our panelists, Toya Lillard, Robyne Walker-Murphy, and Durell Cooper. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you all so very much for joining me. And let's start by going around and let us know who your role in arts and arts education and a little bit about yourself. Let's start with Robyne.
My name is Robyne Walker-Murphy. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I identify as someone who is trying to bring about freedom in any way that I believe that we can. And the way that I do that is through arts and arts education. I primarily identify as a social justice arts educator. And currently I am the executive director of Groundswell. My overall mission statement is to get free and to get free in any way that I believe that we can. And I believe that Black people have always used art to free themselves. We're thinking about enslaved people using song, using dance as concrete, practical, liberatory ways to free themselves. That social justice arts education continues in that tradition when it's done well and done authentically. Groundswell is in its 25th year. We work with youth, artists, and communities to create public art that looks at issues of social and racial justice. And we've had over about 600 murals at this point all over New York City. So that's who I am.
Well, my name is Toya Lillard. I identify as a Black woman, cisgendered. I identify primarily as an artist, as an abolitionist, as a mother, a daughter, a sister, a cousin, a granddaughter, a friend. I am executive director of Vibe Theater Experience, a 15-year-old arts education organization really dedicated to centering the narratives and lived experiences of Black girls, young women, and gender expansive youth. We work with our participants to write, produce, perform work that is relevant to them and really speaks to the issues that they're facing every day. So through theater, music, and other media, our young people are speaking truth to power. They're advocating for changes that will improve their lives, improve our lives, and improve the world. I also am a proud board member of the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable, also the Downtown Brooklyn Arts Alliance. And I'm really happy to be here and in such esteemed company.
Hello, my name is Durell Cooper. I identify as a son to Lavita Cooper and Henderson Cooper in Montgomery, Alabama, as a brother to Edmund Cooper and Tawana Lanzett Cooper and Takata Cooper, my siblings also in Alabama, as an uncle to nieces and nephews who are trying hard to break the system of inequality and inequity that to no fault of their own, has been passed down intergenerationally and epigenetically to them. And I'm here today as founder and CEO of Cultural Innovation Group, LLC, a boutique consultancy in New York. And with all those things being said, I am those things, and I'm also becoming, trying to become better at those things and other than those things as well at the same time. The next version of who I am. So, I'm always defining and redefining what that really means. But I'm very happy today to be in this virtual space with people who I very highly admire, whose work I follow closely. And I love the fact that, we start off with land acknowledgements because I do want to acknowledge that, I am occupying the stolen land of the Lenape people. And I think it's time for all of us to be able to reclaim this stolen time and space that we're now in.
Well, thank you all for joining. I mean, I literally can't. So I've been trying to think about ways to kick off this conversation. And I think what I need to do is acknowledge the three of you and how you've influenced my life and my work. So Robyne, I'll start with you. You, at one point you worked for one organization where you organized a keynote by Sean Ginwright, who has had a tremendous amount of influence over me and impact on me and the work that we do at my institution, the New Victory in U42. And what I recall from that was, one, how he was saying things that were in my heart that I didn't have words for. And what I remember was how you ended up doing a Q&A with him, and it just sort of solidified so much of where I knew we needed to go. And so that has really laid some groundwork for where I think I am, at least in this moment. So thank you for that. Toya, I remember you, the first time I'd seen you many times, but the first time I remember being in space or sharing space with you was, I believe it was last summer, or maybe it was the summer before, where there was a performance troupe from Vibe Theater Experience performing as part of a conference or pre-conference, and you spoke so eloquently about how meaningful and important the work is, and how we need to be seeing young Black women and not addressing them from this deficit perspective, but actually from a growth perspective and how much asset they had. And they showcased all of that and more. And it was a very powerful moment for me. And Durell, you and I have crossed paths in many ways. And I remember sitting after one of our classes and talking to you, and you had this inkling of an idea around flow and how you're moving forward with your cultural, oh my gosh, what is it called? Tell me. Cultural
Innovation Group.
Thank you, Innovation Group. And I just remember being like, I don't know why you're in my class, because I should be taking a class from you. And so I just felt like we had sort of created a very lovely collegiate space amongst each other, and the kind of support that you give this podcast and me is more than I could ever ask for. So I just want to say thank you to each of you for, just being you, because I see you doing the work. I have been seeing you do the work. And in this particular moment, I look to you to help me think of and understand how I can move forward in support of the work and moving forward in terms of anti-racism. So thank you. So upon that, my question really is that in this particular video series, we've been asking, what are some concrete actions that arts institutions need to take to restructure, dismantle, et cetera, systems of white supremacy that are embedded into our culture. And you all were on a panel where Robyne and Toya, you two were sort of leading the conversation on B-Wars. and you started to get into arts education right towards the end. And I was like, go there. And you're like, Courtney, you don't even want us to go there, but I want you to go there. So I thought we could pick up there. So where would you say we are now? And what do you see happening in relation to racial justice in the arts and arts education sectors?
Well, first, shout out to B-Wars, Black Women Are Reliable Sources, your weekly opportunity to chat about these issues and other issues relevant to centering Black women's leadership, believing and trusting Black women. So I think there's a few things happening at once, and everyone is dizzy and confused and scared and frustrated. I've been fortunate to be in a number of rooms where there is a reckoning happening. Folk talk about this reckoning and associate it with cancel culture, and associated with institutions and leaders being called out for upholding policies and practices that are counter to their mission, counter to the field, counter to what they said they were dedicated to, after May 30th, right? We've seen a lot of conversations around what should be done. We've seen a lot of reticence around actual change happening for a couple of reasons. One is when you move beyond the conversation, you have to engage around power shifts. When you talk about power shifts and power changes, that means that some people have to relinquish power. And we find ourselves in conversation with the very folk who are refusing to relinquish power. So the conversation becomes, what else can we do? Tell me anything else that we can do besides me giving up my job to change and to, contribute to the movement and the field. But please don't ask me to actually give up my job or any resources. We see this when we talk about folks putting money behind equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts. I was just a part of a conversation where there was a struggle about actually putting dollars behind this, something that was deeply embedded in this entity's mission. We've been having these conversations without putting a dime towards the actual realization of these dreams. And so there's a difficult year ahead of us in that we're seeing less resources. We're seeing a call to action around a relinquishing of power. We're seeing desperation around cultural institutions even surviving. So that in major institutions that have really made millions and millions of dollars on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and really been tootling along just fine, now find themselves at this place where they're being called in. They don't have as much money to put towards these efforts, and the very folks who are being called in are the ones who have decision-making power. So I'll stop there and let somebody else talk, but there's a lot.
No, first of all, Courtney, thank you for the acknowledgement of all of the work. I think that's part of what the issue is a lot in terms of, I'll be very hyper-local, New York City arts education institutions don't acknowledge the work of Black women, don't acknowledge the work of Black people. And that conference you were talking about happened, I think that was like back in 2015. It was 2015 when that conference happened. And so it's always nice to be acknowledged. So I just wanted to thank you because we need more of that. I agree with everything that Toya said, and the only thing I would add is what needs to happen is reflection. The question why needs to happen. Arts institutions that are now just talking about social justice and being comfortable talking about social justice and racial justice needs to reflect and ask themselves, why did it take too long? Why did it take so long? And we see this kind of reckoning that's happening now after the uprising in June. We saw this before when Donald Trump got elected, and it was like, what do we do? And you had Black people, you had marginalized folks, you had Indigenous folks, you had everybody telling you that there was an issue, that there was a problem. And especially in New York City arts education, what I felt experienced was a marginalization of this work, of social justice work. You all do that over there And then we'll do this work over here, because the foundation of New York City arts education was really about assimilating Black and brown children into white cultures. No one said that, but their idea of what it meant to actually arts education, like the reason for it, was so that these Black and brown children could learn culture. And if we can have them sitting in a concert hall, if they knew how to behave and sit on their hands in a theater, then we were helping to assimilate them into white culture. And that's not what was said, but that's exactly what arts education was doing. That's exactly what arts education felt like, was a measurement of success. And you had us social justice education who were seen as rebel rousers. We were seen as people who couldn't organize. Even what we were really doing was we were freedom building. And so now, then Trump got elected. What do we do? What happened? Ain't nothing happened other than y'all wasn't even listening. Right? And now you all want to, pretend to be doing the work. I was in a session at a summer forum at a very large arts institution that asked me to come and speak back in 2016, asked me to come and speak at their summer forum. And the head of that very large institution sat right next to me and said to me, what you're doing is fine, but I don't really believe that social justice arts education really has seen real tangible results. And then about couple of months ago, when the uprising happened, that very same head, who wasn't there no more, wrote a whole thing about social justice. I was like, wait a minute, wasn't you sitting next to me about 4 years ago talking about this work doesn't work, but using and co-opting the language that people have worked really hard to actually define and put into action? We see a co-option of that language in these larger institutions, and they're the ones that gave the dollar. So what I would say, again, arts institutions need to ask themselves, if they don't figure out why we weren't talking about this before, this is just going to repeat and repeat and repeat. This ain't new. We've been saying this. So I think that reflection really needs to happen.
I mean, what do you add to Toya and Robyne on this right here? The only word that I'll throw out there is this idea of exposure. I think I'm just going to be very frank. White people who have been working within the arts education field specifically have felt pretty progressive in a lot of the work that they have been doing over the past few years. And I think what we're seeing, Freire talks about these ideas of binary concepts. So either you're oppressing me or you're fighting for my liberation. And what we've seen is just how many of them have been oppressing Black and brown children through their actions and through their practices. And there's an awakening around those who have thought that they had been doing the work, getting exposed to what they actually have not been doing. So you see campaigns such as We See You White American Theater, and, we start seeing faces pop up on there that we know. And you go, so how does this person who seemingly, right, is very well-meaning in the work that they have been doing up until this point, is all of a sudden exposed as this person that has not been fighting for my liberation? It's very simple, right? And Toya alluded to this already. When you really start to come up against that wall of power, there's one question that's needed to be asked. What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to give up? Or what are you willing to give into? And for many of them, that answer is actually nothing. And that answer being nothing, yes, you too have been racist. There's nothing else to be said on it. You too have been complicit in this problem, hands down. I know you think you're well-meaning. And I think it was Resmaa Menakem who said this. I've been reading his book too, In My Grandmother's Hands, but he was like, there's no such thing as a nice, kind, gentle white person. Like either you're racist or you're not. There's no in between there. So either you're going to actively be fighting for the liberation of me and my people, or you are not. And not doing, like, nobody cares about what if you're kind. You being kind is not keeping my people from being killed in the streets. So yes, we work with them every day. It's filled with it. Look at the numbers, about 90%. And the more you go up the chain of command at these places, the more whitewashed they become, right? Nonprofit industry itself is built on exactly what Robyne was saying. Like it was built, it was a separatist model to begin with. My mentor, Donna Walker-Kuhn, talks about it in her book. It's like, these things are here now. What are you going to do, right? If you see your face in these things, or if you understand where you are in the continuum of this fight, and you're still not doing anything to change it, you might as well throw on a MAGA hat and be marching down with tiki torches, because you are systematically destroying the future for BIPOC individuals everywhere. So whether you know it or not, like, again, Amy Cooper, she voted for Obama, not once, but twice.
I would add, thank you, Durell. I would add that, extend that to us all in this field, particularly Black folks who came into this field to do good. None of us came into the field to do harm, right? Like, I want to go into arts education because I want to hurt people. And we assume that because we are Black and we have good intentions and we want to go in the field and we want to help people, that our presence in these organizations is good. We think, well, why shouldn't I be the director of education here at this big, large institution? This is amazing that I got this job. I'm qualified and I'm the best person for it. And then in doing your job, right, the very function of that job, because our field is rooted in saviorism, we find ourselves performing white supremacy. We're Black, we love ourselves, we love our folks, but we're performing in a way that only upholds the systems that we say we want to dismantle. So again, everybody, all of us, it would be easy for us to sit here and talk about white people for an hour, but the truth is the work that needs to be done, the power that needs to be relinquished, has to be relinquished by some folk with privilege, by some brown folk with privilege too. So that we have to interrogate our positioning in the field. We have to interrogate whether we trust and believe in young people. We have to interrogate whether or not we're upholding colorism, whether or not we're upholding classist sort of tropes, whether or not we are encouraging our young people to follow a path that leads them into these tropes, whether or not our work is better performed someplace else. So I'll speak from the I, and I wrote a grant. I can't believe I'm saying this on this podcast to replace myself, because I think that the organization should be led by a younger Black woman. And I think that the organization should have shared leadership, and that there shouldn't be one person expected to be everything, right? The artistic director, the CFO, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, all the things that I am right now. How unfair is it to bring another young Black woman into this field to lead, and expect her to do what I did, what I've done for the past 8 years? It shouldn't happen. It's not going to happen. And so change really begins with, okay, I'm giving up my job. I don't know what I'm going to be doing next, but I know that the next leader of this organization is going to come in with a lot more than I did, and with a lot more support and a lot more help and a lot more money. So if we're really talking about change and we're really talking about relinquishing power, you might have to raise money and resources for something you won't enjoy. You may have to give up your job, not know what's going to happen next, and make sure that the next person that fills that position has a better chance than you did. I'm talking to Black people.
I'm hearing you. I have been thinking the same thing, and really having to look at myself. I am exactly the person that you just named, BD Dubs. That's cool. No, because I've also had this thought, like, am I the right person for where we're needing to go? And I can see where we have to go, and I can help set us on that path. But am I the person who's gonna take us all the way there? I don't know. I really don't know. And that's terrifying, but it's sort of liberating to be like, I need to ask myself that question. And we're really leaning into this next question that I had, which was what do we have to do? So when you're talking, Toya, to Black leaders in this field, BIPOC leaders, and Durell, you're bringing up our well-meaning white colleagues. What is it like? Really, what is there a specific thing that each of you can help us know, whether it's in your own life or like I think Toya, you gave us a very specific example. This is something that needs to happen. This is what I'm doing now, and this is what needs to happen next. Are there other things that we can see that can happen and should happen next that we need to either be laying the groundwork for now, or the now hasn't started for what needs to happen next?
We've all been talking about is the internal and external work that needs to be done by each person in the communities that we're a part of. That again, we come into this work well-meaning, we come into this work harmed. Many of us come into this work having shared many similar lived experiences as our participants, as the people we want to work with and engage and to help empower. The problem with that is that unless we're on a healing path, unless we are able to clearly be clear about what it is that our challenges are and where they show up, we can cause harm in this work, so that each individual who is committed, has a lifelong commitment to this movement and this work, is duty bound to be doing the internal work, duty bound to be doing it every day, duty bound to be unlearning and acknowledging and holding ourselves accountable and calling ourselves in and calling our communities to call us in always, every day. It's hard, it's not easy. But again, Black women have been doing it since, the beginning of time. So I think let's do that. I think particularly for Black women, there needs to be healing, reflection, rest, a pause. Many of us are overworked. Many of us saw our mothers and aunts die doing this work. I speak from the I, so that it's necessary to consider longevity and whether or not you have the capacity to contribute to these movements right now. Many of us don't have the capacity, and I think that's okay. I think some folks need to rest. Some folks need to go to work. We all need to reflect and be trying to learn and unlearn. Listening and believing young people is going to be essential. Again, listening to and believing young people is going to be essential. And then from the funding world, I've been a part of these conversations with funders, which is really exciting. And so there's this theme that's emerging about, and we've already known, Robyne, being in organizing, that you water the root of the tree, of the plant, of the thing that you want to live. You water the root. Our field waters the leaves and the flowers and assumes that the nutrients are going to trickle down to the root. This is how we functioned in this field. We water leaves. And then we're like, what happened? What's going on? Why aren't you sustainable? If we water the root, that means that we have to redefine what beauty is, what excellence is, what we mean when we say transformation. Watering the root means that we have to interrogate our own complicity in some of these systems that we say we want to dismantle. So that if we really center watering the roots, that means centering girls, centering those who have the very least, then we are on a path to healing, transformation, et cetera, et cetera. And in the funding world, the resources will go to the folks and the entities and the communities that are able to create an ecosystem to feed everybody. You can't get that water in the leaves.
Join us next week for Act 2 of this episode, where me, Toya, Robyne, and Durell continue the conversation around anti-Black racism and anti-racism practices in arts education.